Okay, so if we look at this particular type of story problem, we got to set up an equation, first of all, to figure out how to solve it. Some of you could just randomly think of numbers. It says find 3 consecutive even integers. Well, I could sit there and go, okay, 3 consecutive even integers would be 2, 4, 6. And then you could go, well, does that work? I take 5 times the sum of the first and the third, and is that 16 greater than 9 times the second? And if it's not, then you got to go, okay, are my numbers 4, 6, 8? My numbers could be -6, -4, -2. You have a lot of 3 consecutive even numbers to look for. Pick and choose and try to fit the criteria that's given to you in this problem. So what we just did on the board over here was we represented consecutive integers, consecutive even integers, and consecutive odd integers. There's really only 2 things you need to know. Consecutive integers are x, x plus 1, x plus 2. Consecutive odd integers or even integers, there's a difference of 2 between them. So it's x, x plus 2, x plus 4. Now, when you solve, there are different ways you could represent these numbers, and some people like that because they struggle. They see odd integers and they say, well, I'm putting even numbers there. It's because the difference between them is even. There's different ways you could represent them, but when you do that, your first number you solve for will not be even or odd, which is what you want it to be. That's why I like this setup that we have right here on the board. All right, so the question says find 3 consecutive even integers. Your answer will have 3 numbers involved. If I look for those 3 consecutive even integers, we represent even integers. They have a difference of 2 between them. So the first one will be x. What's the second even integer going to be? X plus 2. Thank you, Grace. What's the next consecutive integer going to be? X plus 4. So I start out, and I always say, these are my 3 consecutive even integers. Now I have to come up with the equation. My first one is x, my second one is x plus 2, and my third one is x plus 4. Find 3 of them such that 5 times the sum of the first and the third. How do I show 5 times the sum of the first and the third? You get 30 seconds to talk with your partner about that. Jacob, what did you say? 5 times the quantity. Oh, let me just change. You were correct. 5 times the quantity of x plus 4. So it says 5 times the sum. So if I wanted to write 5 times the sum, it would be 5, your parentheses, times a sum. What is your sum of? The sum of the first and the third. My first integer is x. What is your third integer? X plus 4. So it's 5 times the sum, that's what's in blue. The first and the fourth, or the first and the third, sorry, are in green. What's this word is mean? Equals. And then I have 16 greater than, what's that mean? Yep, plus 16. You're going to add 16. I usually do that off to the side with a little bit of space because it's 16 greater than a particular value. What is it 16 greater than? 9 times the second. So I have 9 times the second. But what's your second one? X plus 2. So the setup of the equation. 5 times the sum of the first and the second, blue and green, left-hand side of the equation, is means equal to 16 greater, represented with the red, 9 times the second is x plus 2, which is in orange. Does that look like something you can solve? Okay, you get a minute with your partner. You can grab some markers, grab some scratch paper, whatever. Go ahead and solve through that problem and tell me what your integers are. Go. Okay. How did we solve? What did we do to solve? Go to the left side and do what, Jose? Group the x's together. That is one thing you could do. Some of you, I noticed you were going ahead and you were using the distributive property. Others of you, you're grouping together first. If you use the distributive property, you would have had 5x plus 5x plus 20, right? If you do not use the distributive property, just a moment, get rid of that for a second. If you do not use the distributive property, you can group, like Jose said. So we're going to take 5 times. If you group, what do you get in parentheses then, Jose? 2x plus 4, and that's equal to 9 times the quantity x plus 2 plus 16. Okay, what's the next step in solving the problem? Now use the distributive property. So if I use the distributive property, you are going to get 10x plus 20 is equal to 9x plus 18 plus 16. Okay, what's the next step? Do what? Group like terms. The left-hand side is already simplified, so on the right-hand side we get 9x plus 34. Now what? Move the x's over. Does it matter which direction? No. But if I subtract 9x from both sides, it's going to make it positive on the right-hand side, which means I need to move the 20 over to the other side by subtracting it. So you get 1x, the 20s cancel, the 9x's cancel, and you get 14. 14 is not your complete answer. If you tell me 14, you're incorrect. That's the first term. They ask you for 3 consecutive integers. So what are the 3 consecutive integers? 14, 16, and 18. Now keep in mind those consecutive integers were x plus 2, which was 16, and x plus 4, which was 18. When you get to negative numbers, that causes a little more problem because of this. If it was x was negative 14, for an example, what is the next consecutive even integer? Negative 12, not negative 16. You got to be careful of that because I'm going to take 14 and add to negative 14. I'm going to take negative 14 and add 2. And negative 14 plus 2 is negative 12. And then I'm going to take negative 14 and add 4, or take negative 12 and add another 2, which is negative 10. So absolute value-wise, it goes in the other direction. Be careful of that. Somebody's going to tell me negative 14, negative 16, negative 18 if you have negative numbers. 14, 16, 18 if positive, I would agree with that. Ready for another example? The next example. Find 4 consecutive integers such that 5 times the sum of the first and the fourth is 1 greater than 8 times the third. Okay, the first thing we need to recognize is this right here. Find 4 consecutive integers. How do I represent 4 consecutive integers? X plus what? 1, because they're just consecutive integers, not even or odd. X plus 1, x plus 2, and x plus 3. There's my 4 consecutive integers. Now what I want you to do is tell me what the equation would be. I will give you a minute with your partner to go ahead and come up with the equation. Not the answer, just come up with the equation. So you need to write the equation for 5 times the sum of the first and the fourth is 1 greater than 8 times the third. Okay? Ready? 1 minute. It looks like most of us did a fairly good job of setting it up. It says 5 times the sum. So if I want to show 5 times the sum, I'm going to start with 5. Times means parentheses. Sum means I'm going to add. So I get 5 times a quantity with an addition sign between it. The sum of the first, what's your first value? First value is x. 5 times the sum of the first and the fourth. What's your fourth? First, second, third. Fourth is x plus 3. So we have 5 times the sum of the first and the fourth. Then I get the word is. What's that mean? Equals. And then I'm going to have this, see if you can see this color. 1 greater than, is that color okay? 1 greater, so I'm going to add 1. I like to put it to the right-hand side because if it says 1 less than, you take 1 away from 8 times the third. And most people put 1 minus 8 times the third, and they get the 2 terms switched. So if it says less than or greater than, I go up to the side. Greater than means add 1, less than means subtract 1. So we have that, and now we're going to take 8 times, so 8, ooh, those colors match up, sorry. I could change it if you want. Do I need to change it, or are we okay with the color? 8 times the third. What's the third value? The third is 1, 2, 3. Here's your third term. So that is x plus 2. All right, did anybody go ahead and solve yet? Even though I told you just to get the equation? Okay, I will give you a few seconds to go ahead and solve. I will give you a minute, not a few seconds. I'll give you a minute to go ahead and solve. Okay, because of time, I'm just going to solve this real quickly. You are going to have 5 times, if you group inside the parentheses first, you get 2x plus 3 on the left-hand side. I'm just going to keep this all in one color here real quick so we can go through. Now use the distributive property. So you take 5 times both values inside the parentheses. Distributive property on the left or the right-hand side, which gives you 8x plus 16 plus 1. Group your like terms together. The left-hand side is already simplified. The right-hand side, you can group the 16 and the 1 together to give you 17. So to solve, I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides and then move the x to the left-hand side, and you get 2x equals 2. So if you divide by 2, what is x? 1. That's your first number. We want consecutive integers. So I have 1, which is right here, and then I get 1 plus 1, which is 2, 3, and 4. There's your answer. 1, 2, 3, and 4 consecutive integers. Tomorrow, work on the lesson set while I'm at that meeting.